All right, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another video here on the channel, and today we're going to be talking about the 2024 presidential debate that took place tonight. Now, I made a video during the first debate this year. Obviously, that was between current President Joe Biden and Donald Trump, and then a few days after that whole thing happened, Biden ended up dropping out of the race, and his vice presidential pick, Kamala Harris, basically assumed the Democratic position within a few short weeks after that, right? So with this, it was supposed to be the second presidential debate. Technically it is, but realistically, it's the first actual presidential debate between the two current presidential candidates, which obviously Democrat Kamala Harris and President Donald Trump, who is a Republican. So kind of like in my first video where I talked about everything, I'm going to just kind of discuss the whole thing, how it went. Like, obviously, I just watched this all live. I'm pretty sure a lot of you watching this video, probably the case as well. By the time I get this uploaded, it might be a couple hours after everything ended, but pretty much same point, right? We all just watched this happen live. I was kind of monitoring Twitter and social media while it was going on as well, kind of just seeing what people were saying and like what the general, I guess, vibe of everything was. And so here I am making a video about the second one. We'll be talking, I guess, about how, I guess, both of them did in terms of their performance. Like, did they do better than I expected? Did they do worse? What was going on? Talk about the policies, of course, that they discussed, or what of the policies they discussed. Now, before we get too far in, I do want to mention, I remember tuning in at the beginning of this, right, and they said that Donald Trump had won the coin toss. And to me, I don't know, I've never recognized this during other debates that I've watched, but I don't know. It seemed pretty unserious to me, the concept that during a presidential debate, we're doing coin tosses and whatnot, right? To see like who can talk first or whatever gets the first issue. I mean, it just really reminded me of like NFL Sunday or like playing Madden. I don't know. It just, maybe that's the sports brain in me talking. Just really, it didn't seem serious. And I think that realistically, this whole debate probably shows that we as a nation are a little less serious than we take ourselves, probably. I'll explain that as we go through this. So like I said, I'll discuss the performances. I think I'll discuss that first, actually. So going into this debate, I think, kind of expected a couple different things. Number one, I think most of us expected it to be a shit show. Let's be real. Like, obviously, the last one was fucking terrible. Most of these presidential debates over the last couple of election cycles now have just been terrible. Personally, I think we're kind of at the point in, I don't know, society or whatever, or in the political landscape, that these presidential debates aren't really doing enough to actually, like, sway undecided voters. They're not actually getting deep enough into things to really make that much of an impact. Like, for myself, I tune into these personally because, like, I want to see the policies and see the opinions on these policies that the presidential candidates actually have. And then, you tune in and it's basically an hour of reality television, right? It's two people who are trying to get the most important job in the entire fucking world, right? The leader of the free world. And it's mostly just deflecting questions or hurling personal insults or shifting the blame to somebody else, right? It's just a really weird, constant level of self-abuse I feel like Americans put themselves through when we end up watching this shit and just hoping, hey, maybe these people will perform to a level of competence that will surprise everybody, right? Well, I will say, from both of them, I think it went better than I honestly anticipated, at least me personally, right? Now, I think going into this, Kamala was obviously going to have a better performance than Biden. It's kind of a low bar to cross when you look at that last Biden performance. I mean, the guy was barely fucking coherent. He couldn't hardly finish a sentence, even if it was teleprompted to him, I'm certain. It didn't go well for him. He was not up there in any sort of fighting stance, really, if that makes sense. So it really wasn't a shocker when he dropped out like a week later or whatever. But Kamala, she went up there, at least, she didn't look like she outright belonged in retirement eating banana pudding in a retirement home. I don't know if that's really a compliment to the Democratic Party or not, but I mean, congratulations. You guys put somebody on stage who is actually of working competence, right? Who actually can speak. So, and then on the hand with Trump, right? On the other hand, I think of course, Trump is such a wild card in the reality that you can get the version of him where, like, tonight he was 80% there on the subjects, right? Like, he didn't say a lot of shit that was just fucking completely insane or incompetent or whatever, he didn't go off the deep end and like make some funny comment or whatever. I mean, he did what he usually does. He threw his little jabs and made his little, snarky comments or whatever, and kind of clowned on Kamala and called her incompetent and called her like the border czar and things like that. But I mean, knowing Trump, it really could have been a whole lot worse for him, right? Like, he really could have went up there and just said some fucking just absolute off the wall kind of shit. Now, when it came to actually discussing the policies, I think both of them really could have been better in different ways, but I will go ahead and say, to be fair, in both of their cases, honestly, I think the reason why a lot of the times these kind of debates, they don't really answer the questions a lot of people really want answered. I think that these are too fucking short. Like, this one was scheduled from 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock p.m. Eastern. So that's like, what, roughly an hour of time to talk and actually debate these subjects. And then when everybody's getting like 2 minutes to talk and respond and whatnot, right, like the time adds up quickly. And so it felt like at this point, they really only covered a handful of subjects on the political spectrum when there's more to be talked about right now. Obviously, they talked about the economy with broad strokes. They talked about immigration. They talked about, the border, and they talked about inflation, and they talked about Israel, Palestine, and shit like that, right? They talked about a lot of the basic stuff that everyone expected them to. But I think there's also more issues out there that could have been discussed, and I think it would have given a better, more contextualized version of each presidential candidate. Now, I know it might be impossible to actually ask an American on average to sit down for 2, maybe 3 hours and listen to one of these, but I think if they just expanded these and actually made it where like they had time to really get into it, it would probably end up better off, right? Because I feel like we left this debate very incomplete. Now, when it comes to like the point of the economy, I think that both of them have things that can be criticized or whatever in terms of like their beliefs on economic policies. But in grand, personally, I think that the Trump economy would probably be the better one to be in. I mean, we lived in a Trump presidency and we lived in the Biden-Harris presidency. Two starkly different economies. I mean, Jesus Christ. There was one point tonight during the debate where Trump was mentioning like, the prices on certain things have gone up due to inflation like 50, 60, 70%. And Kamala Harris on the other side is like smirking and like smiling and shaking her head no. And to me, that really just came off as like tone deaf and incompetent in general, because I mean, these are concerns that Americans in virtually every state of the country are dealing with, right? This inflation and grocery prices getting out of control and price gouging and the cost of services and everything going up. It's no coincidence that over the last few years, this shit has actually been increasing. And then when it's being discussed, for you to kind of like smirk and try to laugh it off like that's not happening, to me, that kind of came off tone deaf, and it made me think that like maybe she's not going to take this as seriously as it really should be. Now, at the same time, they did ask Trump like about his tariff plan with China and whatnot, asking if he was really going to double it and whatnot. Now, I think that while certain tariffs can be useful in general, and I think that we should be trying to pull back and win the trade war with China a little bit more, I don't think that broadly applying these tariffs is going to do much good for the American economy. I think that it should be much more hyper-specific to like very certain industries. And I know that to a degree it kind of already is, like they do target certain things more than they do others. But this idea that, we should just be increasing these and doubling these, I don't know if I really agree with that personally. But overall, I do think that Trump would probably have a better economy than Kamala. For instance, like I don't think her plan of giving first-time homeowners or whatever, like $25,000 to go buy a house, I don't think that's going to do anything to address the housing crisis in America. It's just really basic supply and demand, right? We really need to be building more affordable housing in America instead of trying to just give people taxpayer money to go buy houses and then just artificially raise the cost of living and purchasing a home by however much more, right? I don't really think that's a great idea. Then when it also comes to immigration, personally, I also probably think that the Trump presidency would be better for immigration in terms of like handling illegal immigration in particular, right? Like it's once again no coincidence that during the Biden administration this shit has just fucking exploded. They talked about abortion as well. Now me personally, I am actually pro-choice. I know that that's going to probably throw a lot of people off because a lot of people for whatever reason always take me as being more conservative or whatever. Personally, I'm pro-choice. I understand Trump's point of like, oh, let the states decide what they want to do with it and whatnot, right? But personally, I believe that that's healthcare and that's a right that you should have. I know a lot of people are going to disagree with that as well. That's fine. But one thing I would have liked to have heard a lot more spoken about is like, national defense spending and like military spending. They kind of touched on this with things like talking about the Israel-Palestine conflict. But I mean, let's be real. Both of these presidential candidates are pro-Israel. You know what I mean? Like, there's really no getting around that. Like, they're both pro-Israel. Most politicians and most people in the United States in general probably are pro-Israel. So that's not really a total surprise to me there, right? But I mean, like, with stances like that, I don't know what that necessarily says about their national defense spending and things like that. But I mean, when you look at the average American, like, there's a lot of worry and a lot of concern about where the government is spending money, what they're going to be putting money towards. I mean, obviously, the fucking national budget is just already inflated as hell, right? Like, we already spend so much money on so many different things, and there's so many different ways I feel like we could reduce it and just make it better and more efficient. But once again, these are the questions that voters like myself would like answers to, and these are realistically the ones that don't get addressed enough and don't get answered enough because we're too busy fighting about, 6 or 7 different topics within a 60-minute time frame, when in reality, I don't think that's even really enough time. I mean, for instance, you look at like the average podcast episode, that shit's like 2.5 hours, right? I think people could spare a little more time to actually hear the debate and hear what people have to say about this shit, right? Now, when it comes down to both candidates, like, who do I think is better, whatever, right? Like I said, I think it really depends on the issue in general when it comes to a lot of these things. I think that Trump probably has the better economy, if we're being realistic and things like that. But there's also things I definitely would disagree with him on, right? Now, obviously, the country is going to be pretty divided on who won the debate. You're going to have people saying, oh, Kamala completely smoked Trump. You're going to have people, of course, saying, oh, well, Trump, cooked Kamala or whatever, right? But I want to go ahead and point one thing out, right, when it comes to this presidential debate, because during the last one, there was a lot of discussion about how terrible it was, how much of a shit show it was, rightfully so. But one thing I kind of realized just kind of studying the reaction to all of this, right, was people like myself who tuned in for the actual policies and whatnot, right? While I personally left a little bit disappointed in terms of what I saw, and I don't think that it really gave me like the perfect answer of which one is the better candidate or like what's the best option for America. I realized that like during the last one, a lot of people were like, oh, I want to hear more about the issues or whatever. I can't believe this. This is insane. These guys are just arguing and babbling. Well, this time around, I feel like they could have done a better job about that too. But I noticed that like 90% of the public reaction was not about what was being said at all. And it was a very surreal moment because it made me realize that like the vast majority of Americans, I feel like, don't even actually care about the issues anymore. To me, what this presidential debate showed more than anything is that we're so divided along the actual trench lines of like political party. People are more worried about like the clickable moments or like the viral TikTok clips, right? Like for instance, you scrolled through Twitter, right? And a lot of the comments, were people actually talking about policy, but these, maybe were the vocal minority in the grand scheme, because then you go look at the trending part for the debate and it's 95% people discussing facial expressions, like little side jabs that they were taking at each other, and like jokes and insults and shit. Nobody was like actually saying, wow, I think that giving people unfettered access to the southern border to just let anyone walk through is probably not a good thing. Or, yeah, maybe we shouldn't put a bunch of tariffs against one of the biggest trading partners in the world on literally every single thing, right? It wasn't shit like that. Or like, we should reduce military spending, or we should increase. It wasn't shit like that. It was people going, oh, well, look at Kamala's face. She's laughing at this clown right now. Buh. Or, bro, did you guys hear what Trump just said? He just roasted Kamala's whole campaign, man. It had nothing to do with, like, the actual substance of the conversation. It was just more shit throwing between people who I think at this point are treating the presidential candidacy more like a fucking episode of American Idol. Now, I know that this has been a problem for a while where people I feel like aren't really taking the political landscape as seriously in this country as they should. But I mean, Jesus Christ, man, the election is in, they said 56 days on the election thing. I'll go ahead and assume that that's true. I won't fact check that or whatever, right? But if that is the case and like 85% of people in this country are more worried about who makes the snarkier faces or who makes the wittier comebacks, it's just like, man, are we fucking cooked? Like, is this really it, bro? Because we're at a point in this country, right, where, We have a serious crime problem. We have drug problems. Fentanyl is flooding into the country and it's killing people. Illegal immigration has surged. The economy isn't really working for like 85% of the country. More people than ever are fucking struggling to pay their bills. More people than ever have basically no emergency savings. More people than ever can basically now not afford a car or a house or anything that they actually need. More people than ever are more reliant on working their ass off at work in order to get, a couple nickels to pay their bills. All for it to not be paying off, right? While at the same time, might I add, the government deficit is the highest it's ever been, to the point where we probably can't even pay it off anymore. It's actually that unfeasible. We're doing nothing but expanding the federal government while it provides less services to people. We're fighting forever wars on every continent of the fucking planet to some degree, or funding them on every continent to some degree. Most people don't trust the government anymore. Most people don't trust the government agencies anymore. Most people don't trust education in this country anymore. Most people don't trust the mainstream media in this country anymore. Where exactly the fuck are we headed? No one really knows. That's the awesome part about it, man. We live in America. It's supposed to be the greatest country in the world. But once again, these are the two options that we have for president. These are the two people out of 330 million people that we dragged out to do this. And yet, when they go on stage to sell the vote to the American public, none of these questions get a final ultimatum answer. Now, I'll be real, obviously, neither of these presidential candidates, even if they wanted to or could fix every problem in this country, right? That's obvious. I mean, some of these things are a lot more nuanced than people think at first glance, right? But I mean, I feel like if we're going to have these debates where the presidential candidates go up there and speak, maybe they should actually go up there and address not just a handful of issues that they can kind of, tap dance the answers around to. They don't have to answer yes and no questions on. Maybe they should go up there and actually have to be accountable to the American people. I don't know, man. It's one of those things where, once again, you watch it and you're like, man, I really hope that this doesn't make America look like shit, right? I really hope that at least one of these people on stage will fully sell me on their plan to fix this country. And then, you only hear a part of the plan. I wasn't really sold on Kamala throughout a lot of the debate. I feel like she just didn't sell me with whatever plans she did talk about. And then, a lot of the actual discussions that there is really no plan in hand, right? There really is no seal of approval. I mean, for instance, like 2 weeks ago, I went to look on Kamala's website about policies, and there literally wasn't even an actual list of policies on the fucking website. And then, on the other hand, you have Trump, and he does some of the same things, right? Like, he danced around a couple of the yes or no questions tonight as well, and, kind of tried to duck some of that as well. But I feel like they also were a lot more on his case than hers in terms of, going at him like that. So, I don't know. Once again, man, it just comes down to the point where you watch this shit, and it just makes you kind of realize, as existentially, I don't think that either of these people are going to solve the problems that 95% of us care about. And we're at the point where those same 95% of people who actually quote unquote care about those issues are so disenfranchised into the fucking political void that they're just, shit slinging. I don't know. It's almost very fucking dystopian to kind of realize it all happening in real time, in my opinion. But anyway, with that being said, man, thank you guys for watching. If you did enjoy, make sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're brand new around here on the channel, follow me over on Twitter and Twitch at @subtooptimus. Make sure to check out Shoptimus down below. Thank you to my Watch Optimus subscribers. Your support helps the channel tremendously. And until my next video, guys, this is Optimus talking about the presidential debate and signing out. And that's a wrap on this video, but big shout out to my Optimus Nation supporters. You guys are the real MVPs. For $10 a month, you get access to loads of exclusive videos and archived live streams, my members only Minecraft server where you can possibly appear in gameplay, early access to all new uploads, an invitation to the private Discord, and much more.